Cheers, Paul. It's game week, brother.
It is game week.
And the Tuesday show during game week, we break down the opposing team and the matchup. So I'm super excited. It's going to be absolutely awesome. And this is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. You know what? Who else it's brought by right here, guys? InsideTexas.com, the number one spot, recruiting, team news, analysis. You do not want to miss us out. And we have $1 for just your first week. As a bonus, your membership includes a complimentary year to The Athletic. Also, something really cool going on, guys, is the 40th anniversary tour. Tonight, Tuesday, in Houston. Big City Wings starts at 5. All of the addresses and information is in the description, so you can see exactly which locations. Wednesday, tomorrow night, Dallas, Katy Trail Icehouse. I will be there. Thursday, back in Austin at Little Woodrow's, the one on Burnet Road. Everything is at 5. Guys, links in the description. Come hang out. If you're an IT subscriber, come. If you're a YouTube channel subscriber, you can also come. And if you're not, hey, you should subscribe somewhere at least, but come hang out. And then also, guys, I'm announcing Paul is doing a special Friday version at his house in Colorado. So, guys, just show up to Paul's house Friday night. He'll provide all the food and drinks. And then, of course, his personal address will be in the description below. Really exciting. And it's only if you buy his book, 2025 Longhorn Football Prospectus, Thanking Texas Football. This is the best team breakdown of the Texas Longhorns, period, in the world in existence. Also, SEC opponent previews, a piece from Eric on recruiting, and then Paul also breaks down the new world of NIL and roster management. Get the book. All the links in the description, digital and physical, as Paul is skimming through his own book. Good stuff.
Good. I like to read my own work to myself.
Yeah, you just like to chuckle like that was rich.
That was really well said. Wow.
Good morning.
Let's go.
Betting pod this year, Paul. Maybe you could do a little something on everyone gets a trophy, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Hey, we know it's game week because my son got his Arch Manning jersey, and he has now worn it 3 consecutive days, and he is washing it each evening. And then having it laid out to air dry because he doesn't want to subject it to the vicissitudes of the dryer. And I'm
shocked he's washing it every day. That's very mature.
Honestly, that was my contribution.
Yeah.
So now I'm trying to get. I don't want to discourage him from wearing it another day in a row, but I think it is time maybe he branch out in his wardrobe.
Yep. Time to get the chat mad at me. Everybody keeps asking. I replied a couple places. I will not be doing game preview breakdowns, guys. Those are about 20 to 30 hours a week of work. I'm focused 100% on Inside Texas, building out this channel. I appreciate you guys watching the previews, but here, what you're getting right now is all my research I do for the videos. You're not going to have it packaged in a little documentary format, but nothing has changed in my research process or any of that. So you still get the information, just not in the pretty package. I know it's a bummer, but I'm excited to do what I can here at InsideTexas.com.
How can we say you're not delivering it in a pretty package when you're on video? We can all see you.
That's a good point, dude. And you guys are going to see a beautiful spreadsheet, guys. There's going to maybe a Christmas tree coming. Who knows, guys? All right. Let's get after it. Let's pull up some charts. We're not really going to look at the charts a ton because, like I said, it's just an Excel spreadsheet, so it's not that great. But it just allows me to kind of talk through the depth charts here. Let's start through the offensive side. And Paul, are you good with talking quarterbacks first?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, let's do Julian Sayin off the bat.
Well, one of the great things about this show, Connor, is this show and our other shows are collaborative. They're a discussion. It's not just us lecturing you guys. We get feedback from you. And the Buckeye fans discovered our deep dive last week.
They did it last year too. They do a lot, actually. I actually appreciate it.
They informed us that Julian Sayin is in fact 6'2", 220, and an elite runner.
Yeah.
None of that's shown on any film, and the Ohio State's own broadcasters disagree with that. But hey, we have to take them at their word. Julian Sayin is he's built like John Mateer. Who knew?
Yeah. I have to do their list weight, or else it just turns into my opinion on their roster. It was 6'1", 208, I think was their listed, but realistically he's like 5'11", 195, something like that.
Don't say 5'11" if Ohio State Buckeye fans can discover it. But yeah, he's a little slighter. He's about 6 feet, maybe 6'1". But the thing that makes him so special that we've noticed watching the spring game, lightning quick release, and he can make every throw. I said the whole time they were trying to do the Lincoln Kienholz might win this job thing, and I was just like, no, guys. Like if you know Ryan Day's history, and I actually agree with this, he doesn't do the coronation at quarterback, and he thinks the best way to prepare a new starting quarterback is to put the pressure of an off-season quarterback battle on their shoulders, keep them in doubt, make them uncertain. And if they fold from that, or if they can't perform from that, then he learned something. And he's like, well, this guy can't be my quarterback. He's gonna fold in front of 102,000 in front of the shoe. So Julian Sayin was always going to be the quarterback. I understand Lincoln Kienholz does have some traits. In fact, we can talk about this, Connor. If he gets into the game in some capacity, for whatever reason, he's actually got some traits that could give us some trouble on a short prep window. So let's talk about Sayin though first. What kind of things do you see in this guy?
Yeah, so I like Sayin there's an alternate reality where he's the Texas quarterback, right? Sark liked him. Arch Manning comes in, so it is funny when Texas fans are like, Sayin sucks. It's like, no, he doesn't. He's a good quarterback. What I'm most interested in with him, and you see it in the spring game, right? I've said this, but they open their spring game with a screen. First thing they do is Sayin. Thought that was interesting. I expect to see that early. They're immediately trying to put doubt into pass rushers' minds.
Yep.
He's also doing a ton of one-step throw, right? And so this is everything that I saw from that skill set, and also just following Ohio State since then, is that he's an accurate quarterback, and he has a crazy release, man. Like, it's out. You're not going to be able to read his drops well or anything like that. He'll throw it with enough anticipation. This is all stuff that's key, right? Because we're really confident in our pass rush ability. Well, this play style cancels that on the early downs, right? If something goes wrong, now you're in 3rd and 10, you can unleash it a little bit more. But this play style, what the skill set he possesses is actually the skill set you want to see from a young quarterback game one versus a Texas pass rush. So I think that's a really important key. And of course, he has the receivers that'll catch it. So that's my first thought on Sayin, is that he's not headhunting. What you think with a young, good, talented quarterback is he's going to try to throw the post every time, and now you can get to him. It seems like they've coached that out of him, and the strategy will be to get the ball out quick, and he can do that.
Yeah, the biggest thing you have to overcome with young or inexperienced quarterbacks is throwing the ball on time. And Sayin is going to throw it earlier and often, more often than he's going to throw it late. And that's a good base attribute when you have that wide receiver core. And the throwing it on time thing is something that some quarterbacks never get any mastery of, right? We saw that with Jalen Milroe. He never figured out throw the ball on time. And so he was always holding it late, always self-sacking. I don't think that's going to be an issue with Sayin. And a little bit of a foreshadowing, but that might be useful with this offensive line versus the Texas defensive line matchup.
For sure. And then also, we're saying he's a short passer, but they're going to time those deep shots too, right? And we've heard he's accurate there. He's just not going to spam them, which is unfortunate. Or maybe it is I don't know. We'll see. But he's playing under control, and that's important for a young guy, especially in such a crazy situation, game one. That's going to be a big key. All right, backup quarterback, say it goes horribly wrong for Sayin. Paul, what do you think of whenever you're watching a Kienholz, or what do you think of? Are you thinking deep passing more progression? What do you think?
Legs.
Yep.
Dual threat. He is Lincoln Kienholz. If you research his background, he's originally from South Dakota, and he's a really good multi-sport athlete. He's a guy that actually in another era would have probably trained as like a decathlete. Like, he's that kind of athlete. Like, he's just kind of good at everything. And he's a big, strong kid.
Good at darts guy, too.
He's what?
He's good at darts. Like those weird things where you're just good at everything.
Yeah, he's the guy that, like, you go to the lake house with some friends, and there's a guy who's like, I've never played ping pong. Mm-hmm. And he's the good athlete. And then, like, by late Saturday, he's destroying everyone in ping pong. And he's only played, like, 4 times. Yeah, he's that guy. So he's the guy that I think could present some change up with his legs. Now, here's the interesting conundrum, Connor. Sayin is the guy that is most likely to open up the wide receiver room, which is the real strength of the Buckeyes. The Ohio State wide receivers are the best wide receivers in the country. It's just, they are. So Excuse me. I'm allergic to great content. But here's another way to look at this. If you have these amazing wide receivers that people are terrified of, and people have to play two safeties deep, don't you want a quarterback who can do some stuff with his legs, at least in the short term? That's a very difficult guy to game plan if you do sort of a quick turnaround or a quick change. So whether it's Sayan gets dinged up, he's ineffective, or they even have it in the game plan that Kleinholtz is going to get a drive somewhere, or maybe pop in on a short yardage or a red zone. That could be an interesting changeup. I'm not saying it's even likely to happen. I'm just saying it would be an interesting changeup. And I love PK. I love a lot of what he does. He's always like a possession too late on the adjustment on that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, if you do go too high, that's going to advantage the quarterback run. I want to see what you think about this. So here's the PK kind of model, right? It's like the bend but don't break, but just play off, let them catch. Well, that makes me a little nervous with Sayan because that's what they're going to try to do. Yeah. So you're giving them their game plan one.
Well, also the Buckeye receivers are a load after the catch.
Yeah.
For those of you who didn't read Bruce Feldman's freak list with Jeremiah Smith, he's not just fast. He's gigantic. He's over 220. And, he's like a dude that squats 530 pounds. And, he's just an absolute freak. And they were talking about at Big Ten Media Days, a couple of journalists were talking about running into Jeremiah Smith in the hotel and being like, who's this defensive end?
Yeah.
Because you don't see these guys without their helmets. And someone's like, that's Jeremiah Smith. And they're like, oh.
You'll see defensive coordinators have a no cover zone, right? Like literally you don't cover within 5 yards of the ball, and then you let them catch it, and then you rally and tackle. That's great versus normal receivers. Rally and tackle is not a great idea here. So that's my fear. It's tough both ways. This is an incredible receiving core. But say you do play off and your goal is to rally and tackle, keep everything in front of you. Okay, well, Jeremiah Smith can break a tackle. He can juke two guys. That's tricky. And also that's game plan one. You're giving them their right hand. Well, what's the flip side? Are you going to go press them? Maybe. If they are going for short stuff all the time, maybe you do want to contest. Or you have some knowledge, formational knowledge, scheme knowledge of like, okay, they usually go to the slot here. Let's at least cover down on the slot. But flip side is they double move you, and now it's a 50-yard touchdown. So it's a little tricky.
I think the ideal world is that you try to get home with 4, which ties in with Sugar Daddy's question in the chat. Can we get home with 4? Yeah, that's the hope, is you can get home with 4 pass rushers. You could play man under and actually press and still keep 2 safeties deep.
Up top.
So if you get beat on that press, which will happen some, then you've got 2 guys back there to contest. And you've got one of them is going to be very experienced in Michael Taff. He kind of knows the cheats. He knows what the likely route progressions are. So if we can get home with 4, boy, that's invaluable. I mean, that's kind of universal for all levels of football. I mean, I'm coaching youth football right now, 6th graders. If you can get home with 4, we're about to play a team that throws the ball like from the spread on every down. If we can get home with 4, we're going to win the game. And if we can't get home with 4, then the game's going to be super interesting. So it's like that at every level of football. But that is the beauty of if you can get home with 4. And it doesn't mean you have to be vanilla. It's only your 4 down linemen. You can mix it up. You can do zone drops. But if you can press man under is what they call it, then still have that 2-man shell deep, that's really tough to beat. That's really, really tough to beat against a competent defense.
So what do you do to change the picture on a young quarterback and saying, so there's the logic of show press, right? Show blitz, and then simulate out, right? And you simulate out whoever you're dropping. Ideally, you're dropping right into that quick slant window, AKA Sayan is going to see I am hot. So I have to throw the ball quickly, normally to an access receiver like a slot or a tight end. And then you take that edge that's hanging around that slot and you drop them right into that window. What do you think the level of like disguise needed for Sayan is? I know Pete, we do this every year. We're like, PK could come up with X, Y, Z scheme, and then we just run our base. And so it's like, this is just an exercise for us 90% of the time. But what do you think of that kind of trying to disguise? Because you do need some way to contest these short throws, or else they will take them.
So we have an endless number of 6'3", 240-pound guys who can run. And I'm talking about Anthony Hill. I'm talking about Colin Simmons, Brad Spence, Trey Moore, all these guys. And the beauty of these guys is that they can rush the passer. They can drop into coverages. They can chase receivers in space and be the guy that makes the big tackle, the rally tackle on the wide receiver screen so that it goes for 4 instead of 11, right? Little things like that are so unglamorous. And it's like so boring to talk about in football. But being able to run, chase, pursue the football, and make the tackle that prevents it from being a first down is huge. I mean, it's just basically everything. And so that's what we've got. As far as changing up the picture, what you can allow people to do is beyond just the calls of zone blitzes and things like that, which can be useful. You just allow people to play their position. You just basically say, hey, this is your area. If there isn't a guy in your zone when you do a zone drop, I want you to become a late blitzer. Like rally to the football, do something, become a problem. Hey, we know that when Ohio State throws their hot routes, they throw stops. They don't like to throw digs or hooks. So don't drop into a general zone area. Run to the area where they stop on film. Run to that exact spot. Sayan might mail it to you. He might not see. Ethan Burke's big arms might be in his face. So that's all the like games within the game. And Pete Kwiatkowski, in a way, I don't, if you guys will recall, I was out on Todd. I was the first guy that was out on Todd Orlando before anyone else, like literally anyone else. And I caught a lot of grief for it because people were like, these are just injuries. How dare you? We had an amazing defense his first year. You're an idiot. And I was like, what we're doing is unsound and it's turning our players into robots and it's stupid and you're all going to see. And then about a year later, everyone was like, man, Todd Orlando stinks. We got to fire this guy. And the problem was he was turning everyone into basically, he was trying to joystick every defender from the sideline. He was calling where you're going to run, what you're going to do. And what PK says is, I'm going to teach you your position. I'm going to teach you the game of football. And then I'm going to teach you what you can and can't do. But I need to give you a little bit of freedom to be a football player within your position and an understanding of what your responsibilities are. And that actually creates kind of the deceptive look because you can't always predict what that defender is going to do because you're like, Texas, when they go in this look, they're always going to blitz the safety from 27 yards away, right? The Todd Orlando special, blitzing them from Buda. But we don't really do that. We're more like guys are playing their position and being sound. And it's not as sexy and it's fun to do all the schemes on the whiteboard. But fundamentally, good defense is about just being able to play your position well and 11 guys cohering together. How's that?
Well, the funny part is we're like, man, I wish PK would do X, Y, Z, but also the defense is awesome. So it's like, It's not like you can tweak it. The little things are being aware of the quarterback run and then sometimes a little too bend, but don't break. All right, before we keep going, guys, we'll talk after the break. We'll talk running back and then we'll talk wide receiver because someone from Ohio State makes a good point, right? Julian will air it out at points. And we know that offense loves the crosser, loves the seam, all of that kind of stuff too. And they have a new addition at slot and Ennis. And then also we got to talk Max Clare. But before we do that, guys, guess what? Hell of a collab we got going. Some things just go better together. Burgers and fries, Friday nights in football, and now Academy Sports and Outdoors and Whataburger. For a limited time, exclusive Academy and Whataburger tailgate gear is coming in hot. Fuel your pre- and post-game traditions with fan styles and game day gear that say, I tailgate like I mean it. Hurry, this exclusive collaboration won't hang around long. Dig in now at Academy Sports and Outdoors, where fun can't lose. Check it out, guys. Okay, let's talk deep game because we know the receivers can do that as well. So, new addition, Abuka goes to the league. You bring in Brandon Ennis at slot. Really good on the crossers from his limited snaps last year. And then also they like to bend that seam, right? They'll run that seam, they can turn into a post. I think you saw Max Clare hit that same thing in the spring game. So what do you do about the deep shots, especially from the slot? And we're likely starting true freshman Grayson Littleton in that slot. So you're up against Ennis, which is already a handful. But guess what? Ohio State doesn't say X receiver has to be here. Jeremiah Smith will be in the slot. I mean, they're going to test that young freshman. To me, you need to keep him pretty capped with the safety. So what's the key in the deep game? And then we'll also talk the addition of Max Clare, which changes the calculus further.
I think on a reference earlier, those two deep safeties. If you can play man under, get home with 4, play 2 guys deep, and then Taff. One of the great things about Taff is when you don't have to give him a specific coverage, and he can be a true free, right? He can go read the eyes of the quarterback or read the formation and go get into mischief, right? That's when he's at his best. You don't want him necessarily turning and running with a receiver quite as much. And so I think having that shell is really important. And it can lure. Look, Ryan Day is a very good coach and a very effective coach. He's built a juggernaut at Ohio State. But if he has a weakness, and I think Ohio State fans will agree with this, he can be lured into running the ball and sort of a tough guy game when you play that 2-man shell deep and you're contesting some of those routes underneath with man under coverage. And you're basically playing man free, but with the 2-man shell over top. So they're more confident jumping balls and contesting routes. And so Michigan has done that to him several times. Notre Dame did it to him a couple of years ago, that 17-14 game that turned into literally Ohio State needed a goal line stand, to win that game. I think that's something Ryan Day can be lured into because formationally you're like, well, we should be able to run the ball on this. And then he hands the ball off and says, we're going to be tougher than they are. People always doubt our toughness. They think we're just an aerial show. And then he kind of gets off his game plan. So I mean, if I were Ohio State, I'd be like, you're in a 2-man shell. Cool. Jeremiah Smith's still going to win the ball.
Yeah, I was like, that's my big thing. So Ryan Day can get led into ego ball pretty quickly and can get kind of emotional if you dare him in that regard. So hopefully Texas can lure him into that same mistake that he's made. So here's the big thing. We played too high last year pretty often. Now, it wasn't as often as people said. I went back and watched the All-22. There's plenty of situations where Jahdae Barron and Jeremiah Smith are one-on-one, and it's there, but they run the ball, And so it's like you see it. It wasn't as pure as it looked, I guess, on the broadcast. But one thing, a big theme that's in Ohio State world has been like, they didn't like that Jeremiah Smith didn't get to be Jeremiah Smith versus us, right? So, and you can take away a number 1 receiver. That can happen in the NFL, whatever. The problem is when you have a number 2, number 3, number 4, which they do have. But they've also said, look, we're working on things with Jeremiah Smith that who cares? You can do too high, whatever. So they were annoyed by that. And it seemed like a focus schematically to try to find ways to make sure Smith doesn't get taken out of the game like that. So I am interested to see if we see any concepts that we didn't see last year or an emphasis to go once again, great, you have a safety over Jeremiah Smith. Who can go? A safety can't guard Jeremiah Smith. So that's the trick. With saying, though, with a young quarterback, you don't want to tell him, hey, man, the correct thing to do is check down, but you know what? Screw it. Just throw it up. That's not how you want to teach a young quarterback. So we'll see. But they have focus. They did not like Jeremiah Smith getting canceled out in that game. So we'll have to see what they do there. All right. Now, this is the big difference, okay? The tight end room is pretty deep this year for Ohio State. It's this group of guys. Max Clare, we know from Purdue, really big receiving threat. Kaz Marek, good blocker. Bennett Christian, good blocker. And then I've heard them say Jelani Thurman has the highest ceiling of them all.
Yeah, he's supposedly like a super talent.
Yeah, so
he just hasn't been able to play a lot.
Yeah, so there's a 4 deep here, and most importantly, Texas has this problem where we have 7 tight ends, but they're all pass catchers. Ohio State doesn't have that. They can have true when they go 12 personnel, and I do expect them to go heavier this year. So these guys can block as well in 12 personnel. So first things first, let's just talk about the actual threat up the seams with Max Clare.
Huge. I think Max Clare is going to have a huge season because if you're going to pick your poison, people are going to tend to want to take out Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, even Brandon Ennis. Brandon Ennis, for those who don't know, he's a slot. He's a new starter. He's very good, and he's a team captain. So obviously a guy they have some regard for. Think of him as their Jordan Whittington, right? But Clare is going to be key to the game because the guy just runs. And you watch their spring game, and he caught a touchdown, and you see him move. He's just a big, tall, big target, and he's an easy mover. And he's one of these guys that can rotate his trunk while he's running. You guys know how Gunnar Helm was pretty good at that. Like, as he's running full speed, he can kind of just rotate his trunk and keep his stride. That's huge in a 6'5" guy going right over the middle. It's a big old target saying, hey, Julian, just throw it right here. And you can have two safeties deep. And you know what? They're both looking out. They're looking to the exterior. He can split those safeties right down the middle of the field for 20, 25-yard gains. And they will. You just got to tackle them. You can't let them get extra. And then you got to hope on a couple of those tight end looks, Sayan tries to layer it in through coverage, and that turns into a pick. But, yeah, I mean, he's going to be a huge matchup problem for a lot of teams. And he's a guy like Jeremiah Smith. They can line up everywhere. They'll throw the ball out of the backfield. They'll put him in line with his hand down. They'll also go 12 personnel and get your nickel off the field. And then they'll split out both of their tight ends. And now they're suddenly an empty. And you're like, oh, this isn't good. We got a linebacker on Max Clare. So there's a lot of games they can play. I'm sure Ryan Day will. I think Ryan Day is effectively going to be the offensive coordinator in this game. And then I think he'll turn it over time to Hartline. But, I guess, frankly, Ohio State fans don't know what the mix is going to be there. So we'll see.
I was watching a Heartline interview, and they were asking him, they're like, hey, man, this is your game one as a play callers against Texas. And he said something that I thought was interesting. He said it wasn't necessarily that he had this aspiration. It was just he liked football. He liked coach, NFL. Then he's like coaching, and he's like, this has just kind of been the natural progression. But it wasn't like my whole dream is offensive coordinator. So I thought that was interesting. And then there's a debate I've seen from Ohio State guys like, is he in the box? Is he not in the box? Does that matter? So that'll be the big thing. I don't know if he'll actually be on the mic calling game one, because like I said, that's a crazy game one thing. But if anything does go wrong, Ryan Day will likely take back the reins pretty quickly. But it is interesting. It's the same offense, but you can have Sark call Sark's offense, and you can have me call Sark's offense. It's going to look different, like based on your sequences of play. It might be the same plays. Your play selection and sequencing is different. So it could be, who knows, maybe it's a bright spot and he's better, but that'll be interesting to watch Hartline's first game against this Texas defense calling.
One indication that Connor is calling plays is that we have 45 pass attempts and Arch Manning gets run 22 times.
Yeah, if I was Ohio State press, I would have been like, so we're not running the ball, huh? Like that, you want to see, because that's his room, dude, and he's built not one of the most probably incredible position room I've seen. Just back to back with guys. So it will be funny if he does go a lot more pass heavy.
Interesting thing in chat, retired working man says, how about this cooler weather? This should benefit everyone. I think it benefits Ohio State more. One, because we're more used to the heat. And two, Ohio State's got some defensive tackle depth issues. And if you can get their starters overheated, particularly their big guy, who's sort of their nose that holds the line of scrimmage, you get that guy sub 4, Texas can run the ball between the tackles. Remember the Michigan game. They have elite defensive tackles, but when we got them off the field or they had to sub, we kind of ran the ball and ran pretty well in our gap schemes.
And once you're heat adapted like we are, you want to play in the heat. That's your advantage. But it was funny. I was watching them talk about, they were like, man, it could be a hot game. They were talking like it was like 80 degrees.
Yeah.
And it was just making me laugh when I was
like, it's a hot one.
Yeah. I was like, I would love it to be 80 degrees right now, man. But it's just funny, the difference in the locations. All right. So, and like we said too, it's important. Kazmarek, Christian, blockers type, and then Jelani Thurman, the one that everyone's, the don't sleep on player that everyone has on their team. He's going to ball out, that kind of thing. So 4 guys they can choose from with different skill sets. So it's going to be tricky, man.
We better start speeding up our tempo here for running backs and O-line.
So this is the big key for running back. Oh, Paul, we're going 3 hours today, dude.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
So my big thing, a big key for me was the run game, right? Because that's going to take a ton of pressure off of Sayan if you can run successfully. Now, looking at the backs, CJ Donaldson is interesting. We'll talk about him. But James People is a Texas product, I think San Antonio. Not a lot of snaps last year, right? 55, got some in the spring game, or didn't get much in the spring game, kind of like a known starter type thing. So not a ton of reps there. I think my notes are, let's see, forward mover, single cut, good burst, not a power back, not a speed back, pretty balanced, and then a 12.4 100 meter in high school. So interesting back. I don't know about a dominant back, especially comparatively to their room last year, right? So I have to see with Peoples really what's going on there. I didn't see dominance yet, but once again, that's 55 snaps, sophomore, right? Is there anything you had catch on Peoples?
I just know he was a highly coveted recruit out of the state of Texas, San Antonio, I think, right? We liked him, but I think Ohio State sort of said, hey, you're our guy early. And he just was like, cool, I'm not going to play out the recruiting process. If Ohio State wants me, I'm going to go like play at a top 5 program. So CJ Donaldson's more interesting. Obviously, you guys may remember him from West Virginia back in the old Big 12 days. Big back. He actually started off as a tight end. I don't know if a lot of people remember that. He's got great hands, and he's actually a great pass catcher out of the backfield. So something to remember there. He got to Ohio State. He was about 250, 255. And they said, hey, you're a big boy. We see you can carry that weight. We think you're going to be much more effective, much better feet, much more nimble in the 230s. And he lost a bunch of weight, got down. And you see his yards per attempt and all that stuff. That's all West Virginia data, and West Virginia's down, to put it mildly. So I think he's gonna prosper at Ohio State. James Peoples is the starter, though, and apparently they really like him. Ryan Day always says glowing things about him. In the spring game, barely played him. They had him in bubble wrap. And then the guy that's been turning heads and blowing people away, I don't think he'll have much of a role in this game. But it's Bo Jackson, believe it or not.
He's a fast little player, man. Like he's the most exciting whenever you turn on the tape. Bo Jackson's still alive.
And he's not number 34. This kid has no sense of history, obviously. But he's a fast little guy. He's not like the Bo Jackson that we all know of a certain generation, but he's going to be the future of that room at some level. I don't think they're going to throw the freshman out there in a big game like this. I think it's going to be a little scary. But anyway, I think the running back room is fine. It's not Judkins and Travion Henderson, right?
Right.
But, these guys are good enough that if we don't play the run well, they will gain yards. These are, high-level college running backs. So,
yeah, that's the big key. Can they run? And then Donaldson, what was interesting about Donaldson, the past 2 years at West Virginia, he gets a lot of reps, right? Like third in reps, but he's always about average in YPA the past 2 years. The year before that, I think it was his freshman year, he looked great. And then the past 2 years at West Virginia, not necessarily the situation. So big back, we want to see what he can do. But this is a little worrying. Yards after contact per attempt. And me and Paul talk about this. This is kind of a stat you can look at that's more independent of the offensive line. And for such size, that's not a great yards after contact per attempt. If you're going to have a big back and a slower back because they're big, you need them to be getting extra yards. And Donaldson the past 2 seasons hasn't done that. So we need to see what's up with him at Ohio State. But I think James Peoples referred to them as Sonic and Knuckles. So Peoples sees himself as a quicker back, and then Donaldson more as the punch. So we got to see there. But Bo Jackson in the future is a really, really fun player. Okay.
Well, if you go in any big matchup, you got to have a ground game. You got to have a plan of attack. You know what that's like? It's like buying a house. You got to have a plan of attack. If you don't have the best people in your corner, if you don't have the best person to hand the ball to, if you don't have the Bo Jackson of the mortgage world, I mean the real Bo Jackson, then you're SOL. Fortunately, we got a guy for you where you're not going to be. You can call Gabe Winslow or go to Mortgages by Gabe. Reach him at 832-557-1095. If you're driving your car right now, cut yourself, take the blood from the wound, and write that on your windshield. 832-557-1095. Why? Because this is the best damn mortgage guy in the great state of Texas. And if he's the best in Texas, he's the best in the world, Connor.
That's how
it works. Even though Ohio people in the chat know this.
Yeah, for sure.
You got to give Gabe a call. Hey, if your interest rate is 6.5% or higher, you got to give him a call. He will refi you for free. What's the catch? Oh, that's crazy. My guy can't do that. Your guy stinks. Gabe is awesome. Call him, and he will refi you for free. It's just that simple. And if you want to just buy a house, this is the best guy you can do it with anyway. give them a call. Even if you're planning on doing it right now or even down the road, start planning those seeds right now. 832-557-1095. Tell them the elite Texas Homer sent you.
And I agree. Definitely call him. Maybe not the method into which to note keep the number. I'd probably maybe advise against that, but do call him. Just avoid the cutting yourself in traffic generally.
Don't subtweet me. Do exactly what I said.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Okay, let's talk offensive line.
This is fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a fun room. So you want to go Oninawa now?
Well, do we need to do the Ohio State Homer morons? I don't mean you, Homer. You're never a moron. No one's ever said that. Yeah. But there are Ohio State people out there saying that this is the best Ohio State offensive line ever, potentially, and it's complete nonsense, right? So you don't have your best offensive line ever, and then you're doing last-second switches of position because the guy's not performing, right? But I will say the interior core of this offensive line is the core that made it through the playoffs last year for Ohio State. And so these guys have played in consecutive weeks the best defensive fronts in college football, particularly the interior line. So they played Texas, they faced Oregon, they faced Notre Dame, they faced Tennessee. And for those of you who don't know, Tennessee, that was the strength of their team, right? Their defensive line. And these guys held up. So these guys, Carson Hinsman, Teshabola, these guys inside, they really held up. They're tested, and I think they should all take a step forward. The big question for Ohio State was outside, both tackle positions. So that's Austin Sareveld. They moved. They were going to play him. Okay, so long story. Started off at guard. Then they were going to move him to right tackle, and now they were going to put him at left tackle. So Sareveld apparently is just one of these guys who can play every position. He's a jack of all trades, utility knife. And Ohio State people are raving about him. He's going to play right tackle. We'll see how he does. He has the length for tackle. He's not a squatty guy. And then, and by the way, if you look at his team picture, he appears to be a 34-year-old accountant. And then they brought in Ethan Onianwa from Rice, who had a bunch of starts there. He was per speed is an NFL prospect, huge guy, 6'7", 350. Brought him in from Rice to start at left tackle. Didn't pan out. So he's been battling Phillip Daniels, who is a Minnesota transfer who started 3 or 4 games for Minnesota last year as a youngster. And he's been brought in to try to shore up right tackle. And he's been battling Ethan Onianwa.
They're even Oninawa talking about at guard now.
Yes, they're getting him reps at guard in place of Teshabola. So Phillip Daniels may have won that job. We're not sure. It may continue. We may find out who the winner is after they play Texas, right? So if Phillip Daniels holds up, he's the winner, right? If Austin Sareveld holds up, he's the tackle. If they don't, they're going to have to do some rejiggering and stuff. And they did that last year and still won the national title. They endured some pretty serious injuries on their offensive line. In those semifinals, probably had the weakest offensive line of the 4 semifinal teams, but they held it together, and that was the key. So I think there's going to be some interesting matchups on the exterior. Colin Simmons, we talked about the need to rush 4 and get home with 4. Colin Simmons, Anthony Hill, Trey Moore, Brad Spence, Ethan Burke, Vosick. These guys have got to get home. And we've got so much depth at edge that you've got to bring it like a freaking wildcat. Do not hold anything back on your pass rush, because we can get another guy in there 3 plays later and you're going to go rest and you can come back in. So these guys have to absolutely bring it. And we've got to see if we can cause some mischief in this offensive line before they get fully coherent as the year goes on.
So that's the big thing. Like you said, not a ton of experience, like true snap experience, only really left guard. But they did play. The important key is they did play in the playoffs together. So that's a big factor. And Hinsman, when he took over for McLaughlin at center, and then Hinsman also said he's been learning German trash talk for Canoe.
Nice.
So I guess they're old buddies or whatever. So it will be funny if he's talking mess in German to him. So that's a big thing. Saraville, like we said, Iron Buckeye, which is apparently I've learned is a very big deal at Ohio State. There's like 4 or 5 of them or whatever. So Iron Buckeye has real weight.
It's like a strength and conditioning and attitude thing, right?
Yeah. And so, but apparently it's a big deal because I've heard about it like 7 different times. So this line's going to be interesting. So if we look at just like basic pass block, I don't want to get a ton into this, but not crazy, right? Like these aren't killers here. There's a lot of red. And this is from Rice with Oninawa. So we'll have to see, but it's going to take more experience. Is that game 1 ready? Who knows? And then run block better, right? Run block is better here. So that's going to be interesting to see. The offensive line room, we'll see. Ohio State feels really confident there. They're more of like, I think that, what's his name? Van Sickle or what? They have another guard that, let me see if I even have them on here. Yeah, stuff like that. So they have some depth. That's going to be the key. But once again, they're new. Their room, Nash Talks Texas, did a really good graph showing their experience versus our experience. These offensive lines are actually pretty similar in where they're at. So it's a similar thing. We'll see, man. I'm questionable right now, but a lot of that is being painted by Oninawa probably getting paid left tackle money to come to Ohio State, and then he ends up like at guard. So the flip side is everyone's performing so well, they beat Oninawa. The other side of that is they missed on an eval.
Hey, here's the reality. Both offensive lines are going to be in for a reality check on Saturday. And it's a question of who can get it together, rally the troops, cohere, and then allow their skill players to make plays. That's really what this is going to come down to, because both of them are going to have some mess ups. And, you know, the beauty for Ohio State is they get to be in front of their home crowd. And, you know, Texas is going to have communication issues, right? We've got to go silent count. We're not going to, we're not going to have Arch going up to the line of scrimmage and doing Omaha, and 3 different audibles. I mean, that's not feasible. So we're going to have to come up with silent count. We're going to have to come up with some constraints to deal with that noise and the inability to communicate. Whereas the Ohio State offensive line and quarterback and receivers will be able to communicate all they need to.
And big thing, right? Like you're going to look at the tackle matchups. Like I heard this is also painting a broad brush because I only heard one person say it from Ohio State, so I can't say the fan base says this, but they were like, yeah, and Texas has a pretty good edge room. I was like, not a pretty good edge room. It's the best edge room in the country. So it's like, it's the tackle matchups are going to be tricky, and we can go 3 deep at edge and feel comfortable. So that's going to be big. And then we have to see, man, the big question is their interior line. Like we said, guys that are not super experienced, but played in the playoffs together, all of that stuff versus our D tackle room, which has, 50 transfers. So we have to see what's up there. Of course, Canoe being one of them. So I am interested on the interior battle there a lot. And do they pass the ball so damn quick? It doesn't matter for these edges. That's a big factor, right? All right. Anything else on the offensive side of the ball, my man?
No, I think the talent is obvious. I think where the talent is pretty obvious. And I think that's where Texas needs to focus their efforts. And I know everybody, old school football, is stop the run at all costs. That would be a very bad game plan for Ohio State when we play them. We need to stop the passing game. That's where their explosives are. And if they gouge us a couple of times between the 20s and the run game,
great.
You go play the next down.
Yep. All right. But it's an interesting offense because you have such this powerful skill set, and then you have just a young quarterback. So you just don't know. This group, these receivers next year with saying 2 years in, this is a very different conversation, but we just have to see what we're going to see. Okay. Let's talk defense. Let's talk interior for them, defensive line, because that's going to be a big question. So it looks like Cade McDonald, 6'3", 326, and then Houston will be the frontline starters. Houston more 6'3", 290, kind of 3-techie size-wise. But the depth is where it gets interesting, right? Like Hero Canoe comes to Texas. You would have liked Hero Canoe in this lineup after how it played out. I'm not mad at this frontline starters. Like if you look at their performances, they've been pretty solid. Like
I'm also glad you have Edric Houston listed at 292. So if you look at old depth charts or old rosters, you'll see him listed at 265 or 270 because he used to be a defensive end. He's not 270. So people are like, we're going to run the ball all over Edric Houston. It's like, no. He's a 3 technique. He's in the 290s, and he's like, his thing is quickness and getting off the ball and penetrating, but it's not like he's, 240 pounds out there trying to hold up on the line of scrimmage.
For sure. And run defense grade for Houston is 4.
Quite good.
55 snaps, right? So grain of salt. And then K-Mac ranked 8th. So these guys their frontline guys might be tough. But what you're going to have to do is invest, man. Get into the third and fourth quarters because the depth is where Ohio State has questions, and that's going to be a big key. Is
also very inexperienced. Like, you'll notice that these are quality guys. They haven't played a ton of football. And so I think Ohio State's going to be a better football team in October and November than they are now. Same for Texas, probably. But
yeah, these teams are oddly similar.
I mean, Ohio State lost 4 pretty high-level defensive line starters. And I know people are like, we just reload. It's Ohio State. Hey, man, there's going to be a little bit of
reload. It doesn't mean reload game 1. It's that fact too. Because like I said, there's a lot of similarities between us and them. It's pretty interesting, and that's what happens when you have 2 good teams that lost a lot of NFL guys. But whenever you hear like the interior can't stop the run, the starters likely will be able to stop the run. You want to get them into their 40 snap range, getting gas, and then let's get the backups in and then see. That's the key there for the interior. All right. You want to talk edge room? I like their edge room, man.
We're going to see on their edge room. They've got a lot of guys, a lot of depth, and different types of bodies and different types of edges. But some of these guys are highly touted, but they haven't quite done it yet.
Yeah, but I like them. I think the projection's there. Like, I like Kenyatta Jackson. I really like Caden Curry. Like, those guys, like Caden Curry can move, man. Like, some of the stuff he was doing on like punt, what is it called? Punt coverage. I mean, he's lengthy. He's the one that stripped Silas Bolden. He just like stuck his arm out because he's long and got him. I really like the edge room. And then not to mention, like, their depth is here too, man. Like, CJ Hicks comes from linebacker. He sucked at linebacker. Like, his stats, like, he couldn't run block to save his life, but he was a good pass rusher. So they moved him down to simplify things, and now he's able to rush. I like CJ Hicks. Logan George was the Idaho State guy. That's a good number 3. Then you got
Bo Atkinson from North Carolina.
Yeah, I would say Bo Atkinson, who I honestly thought was potentially going to be a starter from North Carolina. I like that there. Honestly, don't know much about Zion Grady. In the Ohio State fans in the chat, let me know about Grady. But the interior is where I have questions. I don't have a lot of questions. I think these are really cool athletes, and the transfers have the experience. So like 647 snaps when he was at Idaho State, 381 at North Carolina. So I think their edge room is actually going to be talented.
Yeah, and they got a ton of depth. I think the interesting thing is the different types of bodies, and what they chose to go with, at least on the depth chart, we'll see. They're going to adjust in game. Is they're playing their big edges, and they had big edges last year. If you'll remember, one of the key aspects of that Noles defense is the 2 edges basically playing heads up or just slightly shaded outside of your tackles, and then being able to control them in the run game. And then, of course, using their quickness on them as pass rushers, taking gaps. That created that shield to keep their linebackers free to be blitzers. And then, of course, downs is, like this weird quasi safety Mike linebacker position that was enabled by their large ends. So the fact that they're starting big defensive ends again, and specifically in Kenyatta Jackson and Curry, tells me they may run that look a little bit. What it does potentially say also, though, that's interesting, I wonder if they're going to be able to cover quite as much ground laterally. And so I think this just reinforces one thing that I think I'll hit on in the game plan is that we're going to throw the ball to our backs quite a bit. And we're going to try to get these guys running side to side. And we're also going to try to time up their blitz as we did last year, where Jaden Blue caught those 2 touchdowns. So we'll talk about what personnel we're going to use in that regard when we talk about the linebackers. But I think the edge room is really deep. I don't see the 2 guys that they had last year. But, we'll see. That's why they play the game.
Yeah, and then so Kenyatta Jackson at a ranked 12th in win percentage on the pass rush. But CJ Hicks here, number 2, right? So this is like CJ Hicks, I'd expect him in third down packages. And like I said, former linebacker. So kind of a Brad Spence situation for us. So that'll be interesting. Let's see. Caden Curry, not a great win rate. 34th in his run weight. So that's going to be interesting. But Bo Atkinson's at 5th.
So I can tell you this. I mean, I rewatched the game Kenyatta Jackson struggled as a pass rusher against Texas, at least. So we'll see. He was a huge recruit. I mean, literally a huge recruit. He's like 6'6", 265.
Yeah,
but he's from Florida, I think. He was a 5-star, and he's a senior now. And he's kind of this guy of like, whoa, the light's turning on for Kenyatta Jackson, and it never has quite turned on. So maybe this is the year it turns on. We'll see.
That's the big, yeah, and you're right. So Kenyatta Jackson also 25th in run defense. CJ Hicks 38th. Like I told you, CJ Hicks not a run guy. He's going to be pretty much a DPR style. But Caden Curry there, I really like Caden Curry, man. How he moves, he's kind of got like the Burke length too. Like he's like 5 yards away from you, but he somehow smacks the ball. So we'll see. But less questions.
Oh, correction from the chat. Kenyatta's from Duncanville. Interesting.
Cool. So that's a big thing. We have to see with the projections, but I feel better about their edge room far than I do about the interior D-line depth. They have more depth.
No, he's from Miami Gardens in Florida. I got to stop listening to the chat. Be quiet. All right.
Oh, Madonna.
Yeah.
Prep. That'll be cool. All right. Now let's talk linebackers. I know this is a room that Ohio State's really excited about. Return Sonny Styles, and then also Arvell Reese, who got a lot of snaps as well. So there's a couple players, like it can be a little bit deceptive because you'll be like, well, on defense, they only return 3 starters. That's true. But there was plenty. It's kind of like Jelani McDonald for us. Like their third guy got reps. So you can't they're not 0 rep off the bench guys. So Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, what are you thinking there? I know you will probably key in on this room.
Styles, former safety, which gives you some idea about his mobility, but he weighs in the 240s now. He's 6'4", so no safety for you, Sonny. They moved him linebacker. Great blitzer. We saw it last year in the playoff. Really good blitzer. Ohio State love to bring those guys under Jim Knowles. We'll see what Patricia does with them. They're bigger guys. Arvell Reese is kind of like a physical clone of Sonny Styles, another 6'4", 240 pound plus guy. The guy that's really interesting is the other linebacker who they
Reese.
Go ahead.
I would say Reese. That's the one they're keyed in on.
No. So Peyton
Pierce.
He is the linebacker from Lovejoy in Texas, guy that Texas recruited, and he ended up going to Ohio State. They love him. He's just like the ultimate ball magnet, tackle magnet guy. He is unremarkable physically. When you see him next to Styles and Reese, who look like, Greek gods, Pierce is just sort of like, looks like a walk-on. But this is a dude who just has a nose for the football. If you watch the Ohio State spring game, there's a stretch where he makes like 6 consecutive tackles, and it's just ridiculous. This is a guy that Patricia is going to play a lot because he suits and fits that mold of just go find the ball while we run our schemes up in the front and run a bunch of twists, and he'll make us right because he's got such a nose for the football. Reese and Styles, decent off-the-ball linebackers, like instinctively and instinctually and all that. More blitzers. Like you kind of want to point them and shoot them. They're not necessarily like, diagnosing and tackle to tackle and making 14 tackles. They're more impact players. You're trying to blitz them, stun them, do stuff like that to create negative plays. Peyton Pierce is more your classic off-the-ball linebacker. So all 3 are going to play a lot. And I think the opportunity for Texas here is trying to get Styles and Reese matched up in space on our running backs. Jaden Blue had a lot of success in that last year in the playoff. We're going to do that with Wisner, and we're going to really try to do that with Ryan Niblett. So not a name you've heard a lot this summer. There's probably a reason for that, and it's not because he's underperformed, but he is the fastest guy in pads on the Texas roster, and he's got good enough hands. And he's a guy that if he's running a wheel route out of the backfield, it's not like a typical running back running the wheel route out of the backfield. It's a 4.25, 4.3 40 guy running, and he can do stuff after the catch. So Ohio State will have to be careful with that, but those guys do get home. And when Sonny Styles gets home, you feel it.
Yeah. So you have Sonny Styles, the number 1, if added to the SEC, number 1 linebacker in sacks. And then Arvell Reese with less snaps. Arvell Reese had 19 snaps in the pass rush. He had 3 sacks. So it's like these guys are for real. That's going to be the big thing. Peyton Pierce didn't have enough stats to give you there, but like Paul said, real knucklehead, like real linebacker style, old school style. So, yeah, that's going to be the big key. And then I want to see. So this is what I'll hear a lot. And in Texas fans, you're going to get a really skewed view of this because we were able to make things happen. But these are good coverage linebackers generally. So Sonny Styles 6th and Arvell Reese 5th. I think a Ohio State fan said good sideline to sideline linebackers. Yep. So can Texas scheme them up again and make them not look like they can cover? We'll see. That's going to be the key. But generally, these guys are good coverage linebackers.
Well, I think the point on that is when they're blitzing, they're not in coverage.
Yeah, but also whenever you get manned up and then you take Jaden Blue on that wheel, like you said, you're going to look a little different.
I mean, there's not really a linebacker in college football that's going to man up on a really high-level receiving running back, right? It's just not a thing. So, Derek Brooks doesn't play college football anymore.
Yeah. But that Niblet package, man, if you see that 21 roll out, alarm bell should be going off because remember with Keelan, there was one point where Keelan had 7 carries for 4 touchdowns. It was when that comes on, they're trying to score. So if you're Ohio State, if you see Ryan Niblet on the field, y'all should be very suspicious that something's up. All right, dude.
This is going to be a big part of the game, man. Everyone's focused on the line of scrimmage, which you should be in any football game.
It's about the secondary and our receivers.
Man, so a lot of this is about one. Obviously, Caleb Downs is an exceptional player. He's kind of a multi-tool. You can plug him in wherever you're deficient, and he's going to make a bunch of plays for you. But Jim Knowles was able to craft a boutique defense exactly for Caleb Downs last year. Patricia's not running that exact defense. There's a bunch of Ohio State fans that are like, we're running the same defense and it's an NFL. No, you're not going to. And it's not an NFL defense, but it was a brilliant defense. And it was a big part of why you won the national title because it freed Caleb Downs to just play make. Patricia's not going to run that, but they could run that look on a couple of drives, see if we, how we handle it. I think he's obviously going to be huge, but to me, the real matchups are going to be Davis Igmanosin outside. He is a walking pass interference penalty. Mm-hmm. And basically his effectiveness in coverage is what he can get away with. And you know what? In the college game, it's probably a smart way to approach it, which is I'm going to be really handsy. I'm going to be grabbing you the second you're releasing off the line of scrimmage, and I'm going to keep my hands on you the whole way, and I'm going to route you. And unless the officials want to say, hey, we're not going to allow that and start repeatedly throwing flags, then he's going to get away with it, and he's going to be hugely effective. If he can't get away with it, then that's where Texas is going to get, some penalties, and maybe, Davison has to play a little bit more off coverage, and, we'll have some more effectiveness. Same thing with the Lorenzo Styles and Jermaine Matthews. Jermaine Matthews is very well thought of at Ohio State. I know there's been a lot of talk about the true freshman Sanchez from Texas, who's apparently turning a lot of heads, but people love Jermaine Matthews at Ohio State. He just hasn't had a chance to play. He's the other corner. The interesting matchup might be at nickel with Lorenzo Styles. If you do look at his very limited snaps, and I mean very limited, he didn't play great. So I'm not sure what that was about, but there might be an opportunity there. We'll have to see. I like Jalen McClain fine. I think he's going to be good. He's going to allow Caleb Downs to do more of free safety stuff, which will include just dropping down in the box, because you don't want Downs playing. So a lot of the spring game, they played Downs single high. That's not that ain't how they're going to use him. He's going to be moving around. He's going to be in the box. He's going to be, playing matchups. And, on Inside Texas, I wrote up some of the potential things from the Washington Huskies that Steve Belichick used. Patriot tree, the only Patriot tree that's coached in the college game. And I identified a couple of areas where they'd use Caleb Downs in a certain role as what they call a rat defender. And I think he'd really excel doing that. But the huge part of this is going to be what degree of physicality the Texas receivers can fight through and what the officials decide they're going to allow, specifically with Davison Igbenison, who had 16 penalties last year and probably could have had flags for another 20, 30. He's just, it's kind of a smart way to play college football, which is a 15-yard penalty ain't going to hurt you the way a 55-yard touchdown will. So he'll just tackle a guy if he's getting beat.
So absolutely. So with Igbinosun, here's the big thing. For every time he got called, he got away with 5 of them. And that's a strategy that the refs just aren't going to call it every play. You fatigue them. It's the same with offensive lines that hold every play. So there's value here. He's a big corner. So he is going to – this is how you waste a receiver on Igbinosun. You try to fade him up in the red zone where there's condensed space. You try to run the receiver near the sideline. Igbinosun absolutely mauls people in condensed space, and if they're up against the sideline, he'll push you out. Now, it's been a theme in Ohio State world. He needs to quit fouling, and I saw an interview with him, and he said, look, we watched the tape, and the problem was I just wasn't getting my head around. So, and then they asked, well, are you going to change anything besides getting your head around? He's like, no, that was the problem. That's incorrect. You do need to get your head around. You're still mauling receivers. And why do you maul receivers? Because you lack skill. That's why you do it. And so he needs to develop coverage skill so he doesn't get afraid when the ball's in the air and just attack. That's the big thing. So they're going to throw at him. But the key too is, man, get him in the middle of the field. Don't be doing the red zone stuff and don't do the sidelines. He can't cover in space. He can come down in the run game. Awesome there. Big physical. Don't play his game. He will win that game. So that's the big part with Igbinosun. And sometimes, hey, man, it's 3rd and 12. Hey, man, throw it up to Igbinosun and see if he'll foul you. That's going to be a big factor.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about Matt Patricia, and I brought it before, is part of the Patriot way for big games is that you start not with the idea of like, here's our defense. What kind of tweaks do we want to make for this opponent? That's typical football. The Patriot way was, that's the opposing offense. Let's build out what defense we would run ideally to stop that offense. And so that's how you end up with the Patriots running a 6-1 against the Rams and Sean McVay to stop outside zone in the Super Bowl with only 2 weeks of prep. And they played only zone coverage behind it, which Jared Goff was not good against. And the Patriots had played man the entire season. So that is the Patriot mindset, which is in big games. We start with your offense and build out a defensive scheme ideally suited to stop what you do. We want to make you play left-handed. And that is a fundamental difference between the matchup. People are saying, oh, we humiliated Wink Martindale in Michigan. Wink Martindale runs the same stuff at the Ravens. He's going to run the same stuff at Michigan. He's an easy scout. Sark probably watched a half of Ravens football and crafted his game plan. Same thing with Nick Saban in Tuscaloosa when we took down Bama. Obviously, Sark was intimately aware of what Saban likes to run and how to scheme against it. Patricia, we don't know what he's going to do. And there's only been one translation of the Patriot defense to the college game. 1 year of Steve Belichick at Washington. That's the film that I would watch because Belichick actually did a good job there. And he distilled the key and core elements of what the Patriots do to the college game. And then he knew what he could throw out, should be thrown out because it was too complex for the college game. There's a bunch of Ohio State people, again, in the chat saying, we're running the exact same defense. Patricia will just tweak it. You're not. And you'll see. And, well, you won't see probably because if you're saying we're going to run the same defense, I'm not sure you know what defense you ran. But if you think you're going to run your 2 defensive ends as 4 eyes, Styles and Arvell Reese are going to be lined up outside of them, right? Because that was the Buckeye defense. And then Downs is going to be right behind your nose, 6.5, 7 yards off the ball as this quasi Mike linebacker. And then you're going to have 2 safeties in between the hash. That's the Knowles defense. That's not what you're going to run. So if you think Matt Patricia is going to run that like as your base, good luck. I honestly don't think you could write out your defense on a whiteboard if you tried, but that's not going to happen because it may be thrown as sort of like a look, but that's not how Patricia is going to deploy them. That's just not how he sees the game. So that's just the fact.
Paul feels very strongly.
Well, I'm just telling you, like, you can tell the difference between guys who can actually know what's happening on the field and who just listen to press conferences, right? We're going to run about the same defense, but Matt's going to bring some different looks. That's not ever what happens when you get a new DC.
Knowles is so specialized, man. That's such
Knowles ran a very specific defense that no one had seen really in the college game or the NFL game. By the way, you can't run that defense in the NFL. They murder you outside the hashes. But in the college game, you can't do that. the way that the NFL does because of the narrower hashes. But I just think, look, it's no different from our fans. Most of the time they're watching the game and they follow the ball, and then the color guy tells them what happened, right? What I'm telling you is that I know what Ohio State ran. It was an awesome defense, but it was a very specialized defense that gave everybody fits precisely because of what I described. So Patricia ain't running that as your base D. That's just how it is.
No, it's like Koloniki at Penn State, and they're together, right? Those are two very specialized offenses and defenses that not everyone, you couldn't just run the Koloniki system. Also, we knew him at Oklahoma State. We played Knowles prior than to Ohio State. So here's my thing with Patricia and the unique scheming. I don't know how much that'll translate that level of uniqueness. I don't know. And so it's that's tough, man. Like, and also I don't know what Ryan Day says, because there is a part of the coaching side that's like, no, we're not going matchup dependent. Now, game one's a very different thing. You've been able to prep all off season. I don't know when you get into season what it looks like. And then it seems like you're a little bit more bullish on Patricia as a coordinator. I'm not a big Patricia guy. So I'm
not bullish. So let me explain
the uniqueness of it.
What I'm saying is he's going to do something different that Sark can't just prepare for by watching Matt Patricia Detroit Lions film from 2019.
For sure.
So what I'm saying is there already is a Patriot disciple who has adjusted and created a Patriot defense for the college game. That's the film I would be watching. I would not be watching 2015 New England. Also, Patricia has never succeeded without Bill Belichick.
Correct. Yeah.
That's a fact. So what's interesting about Patricia is if you hear him talk about defense, it's so impressive. He just incredible detail, really interesting things that he'll say. But when he's been asked to produce a defensive product, he's never done it without Bill Belichick. He sucked in Detroit. He sucked when he was an analyst with the Eagles. They turned over the defense to him last year, the last 4 or 5 games of the year, because they were frustrated. He sucked with the Eagles. So is it possible that it's all come together and he gets it now? Maybe, but he's like I compared it to a general who can quote doctrine and tactics to you from the Army War College book, but you put him in combat and it's too big for him. And that just seems to have been the case with Patricia. Maybe it's different at Ohio State. We'll see.
So that's the big trick, right? And Sark has said multiple times that when people play Texas, they'll come out in these novel looks that were not on tape. So Sark and them also have benefit adjusting. You'll play some random team and they'll throw out a 3-high defense that they hadn't shown before. So if he does go super game plan specific, which you do expect some surprises, Sark has been able to adapt to that. So big thing, Jermaine Matthews at the other corner slot. This is more of a pure coverage corner. Igbinosun is just a big guy, and he uses his size. Jermaine Matthews can cover, actually. And he was kind of number 3 corner last year. So 231 snaps. Jelani McDonald situation has reps. So Jermaine Matthews is going to be an interesting player for me to watch. That's a matchup I'm really keyed in on if he's on Livingston. The second corner spot is the most interesting to me. And then Jalen McClain at that other safety spot. They also have Malik Hartford. They can rotate as a safety 3. So, but my big matchup on the defense is one thing: interior defensive line. Can you run? And then the second part is, can the wide receivers win? Because also this Ohio State, and the Ohio State fans are going to get mad at me and say I'm accusing you of cheating. I'm not accusing you of cheating. I respect the game within the game. Ohio State DBs are coached and use every trick in the book. If you get by them, they tug the jersey and you're slowed down. They're incredible at it. And they bring coach to do it. It's all fair in love and war. I hope our DBs can do it too. But it's smart. Yeah.
I mean, that's how you should coach college DBs. Yeah. As long as you have the 15-yard PI penalty for thwarting a 70-yard touchdown, right? The NFL, you're disincentivized from doing a lot of that because they go mark the ball where the penalty happened, right? Yeah. So in college, I'd probably play like Davis and Igbenison too. I'd probably interfere on every play.
He's on the extreme end where you're
he is.
Learn how to cover. But if you watch guys like Downs and Jermaine Matthews, really actually skilled at slowing down receivers. I've seen them almost get beat on their fade, and they do the perfect. It's not too hard. They just pull right there on your back of your jersey, and it slows you down. So this is my big thing, man. We know our receivers have speed and big playmaking. What I don't know about these receivers is how good are they to get off release? How do they handle physicality from DBs? I know they're fast, man, but this is a different play style. And so are you getting frustrated? Are you letting their tricks work? It's fair. So that's the biggest question. I need to see the physicality and the meanness a little bit of our receivers versus this group, because not only are they great athletes, they're coached to use every trick in the book, and it's really effective. So great athlete with skill. So yeah, the secondary, and a lot of people are just like, their secondary is good because they can name Caleb Downs. It's the secondary should be pretty good. Lorenzo Styles, or Paul keyed in on it. He made an interesting point in the interviews. They're like, what are you comfortable with? And he was like, man. And that means you don't understand the scheme. It means you like just man because it's just man. And you'll see, right? Like, here's his coverage grade, 84th. You're going to need a safety over Lorenzo Styles. And he said he's struggling with zone and dropping back coverage. So that means Lorenzo Styles likes to go forward, run game, blitz kind of stuff. And but you're going to need to have him capped even by his own admission on what he's naturally good at. So that nickel spot, now here's where they get you. Downs can play nickel.
Yeah.
Jermaine Matthews can play nickel. And so they have all these kind of little options there too. So you have to see, because that nickel spot's not always just guaranteed to be one guy. They can play matchups there. So that's big.
If Downs comes down at nickel, you got to be really concerned, one, about your edge in the run game, because Downs plays like a linebacker against the run, right? At 205.
He's so small.
You got to worry about him as a blitzer coming off that nickel. And if he gets a free shot at your quarterback, that's a lot different from a typical nickel hitting your quarterback. So, that's something we're going to have to look at. But I think that's an interesting matchup for Texas to exploit. I'm just very curious to see what Patricia runs. I mean, it's going to be super interesting, and I think there's going to be some cat and mouse game within the game. As I said, when Sark went up to play Michigan, I think he was grinning at the first play of the game. Like, hey, it's not a question of if, but when. And it was 24-3 at halftime, and we basically put up our stuff and just flew home, right? I don't think Sark knows what to expect from Matt Patricia at all. So I think he's going to have to figure some stuff out on the fly. And I think we've gotten a lot better at that. Because you remember back in 2021, 22, and partly because of our components, but when people would throw a crazy left field pitch for us,
it would get us
time.
Yeah.
I think we're getting much quicker in adjustment, because Sark is realizing when you coach at Texas, teams are going to run crazy junk defenses that you've never seen, and you have to adjust on the fly.
Yeah. And then I also mentioned Bryce West will play some nickel. Yeah, that's correct. And then, no, it just means he likes man. It would if they asked him that, but they didn't ask him. They asked him what his strengths and his weaknesses were. And he said strength was man, and his weakness was dropping back and zone. So the reason why he likes man is because that's my man, and everything that takes understanding, awareness of scheme, he doesn't seem to like. So that's why I keyed into that. Because all players, you'll ask them, what do you like to play? I like to play man because I'm a tough guy. But it was the context of all of that mattered.
There's a Buckeye in the chat that says, I think Knowles left partly because he didn't want to be found out with less senior players. Is that the main reason he left, Buckeye fans?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the reason, but it's also true that you guys had a very veteran defense, and that really suited Knowles because he had such complex, specific rules, to be able to run that defense. You had to make a bunch of side adjustments. I'm sure it would have been less successful with different players, but that's not the main reason Jim Knowles left. You guys know why Jim Knowles left. Don't play coy.
Super chat we got to get to. AR, thank you, man. Do you think Sark has the running back he needs to go after OSU's linebackers? We got our only 2 scores off that mismatch with Blue in the Cotton Bowl. We kind of hit this, but just real quick. Niblet, yes, we do think that. Trey Wisner, I don't know. He's not really your wheel route guy. So that's going to be the trick there.
Yeah, again, check out Mr. Niblet. CJ Baxter is a good pass catcher. He hasn't shown a lot of wiggle in space, frankly.
Right.
That's just the truth. We'll probably do some of that crazy screen game we do that terrifies all of us. The throwback screen where you're just barely missing the edge, to hit the running back. But I think we'll do more like side to side, horizontal swing pass. We're just trying. We want to get Ohio State running. We want to get them moving horizontally. We want to get their big guys a little winded. We want to force some substitutions, and then I think that's when you're going to see some of those wheel routes and some of those Texas routes. The concept, not because it's being run by Texas, and that's where I think Texas can make some hay. Particularly to your point, Connor, if they're a little insecure about Styles, and Patricia's like, hey, we can't leave Styles by himself in the slot. We got to keep a safety over him. That creates some coverage predictability, right? Yep. And now we can start to work off of that. And you can kind of ignore some of the other games that Patricia's running because you know that combo is set. And now you can start doing some stuff, flanking them and on formation and stuff like that. Sark actually had a pretty good game plan against them last year. But Golden going out for 2 quarters, not helpful to us with that injury. And then, frankly, Ewers was just not the guy to execute in some of that passing game.
For sure. Any final big picture, anything you think we missed globally that matchup-wise that we should talk about? I think we went through a lot.
It's a really interesting matchup. I think both teams are going to be a little unprepared for the other. And you're going to have a bunch of adjustments on the fly in game. Yeah. And that's exciting, right? You would think that would favor the home team, but sometimes you can lose your poise when you have some early setbacks at home and the crowd gets that, oh no.
That was Michigan. Silent.
Yeah. And so, I think that's what the hope is, that Texas can start fast. But I think it's going to be really interesting. I think both teams will be better in November. I don't think this is determinative of either team's whole season. But, Texas did start off as a 4.5-point underdog back in January when those lines were first released. You can now find 1.5s. You can find certainly tons of 2.5s and 2s. So there seems to have been a general movement towards Texas thinking, hey, 4.5 is way too much if we think these teams are basically evenly matched. But yeah, it's just going to be a super interesting matchup, and it's going to be the biggest game in college football. All eyes are going to be on Texas, Ohio State. So it's going to be huge.
Yeah, it's just awesome for the sport, man. And these two major fan bases, game one, and everyone, both sides have their nervousness, right? There's a ton of turnover and a ton of questions. You can do the same for Texas. There's some questions there too. So it's going to be fun, man. I'm excited. It's finally here, Paul.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny too, because you have the combo of not only do you have huge natural fan bases for both teams, like massive fan bases, not just people who went there, but like, people who just affiliate with the university, but also both teams are strong hate watches. Mm-hmm. A lot of people hate Ohio State and they hate Texas. So you're going to get those watchers as well, which is how you get really crazy ratings. So it's going to be wild.
I'm super excited. All right, Paul. Thank you, man. Chat. Thank you guys. You were lively today. And also thank you to the Ohio State fans coming in here, giving good information, all that stuff. Of course, we're going to have more prediction videos and stuff like that. So we'll see you in the comments. And yeah, some of the Ohio State fans can be a little silly in the comments, but you guys do show up. It was the same with last year and this year. Y'all do make a little algorithm difference. So shout out to y'all. Paul, thank you, man. This was IT Live, and it was brought to you by the one and only Academy Sports and Outdoors. Have a great day, y'all. Peace.